Hey guys, I'm Dr. Hajhosseini, a wound healing specialist here in Los Angeles and founder of Wound and Burn Centers of America.
This Beverly Hills plastic surgeon is facing serious charges of drugging and sexually assaulting an employee, and police suspect she is not the only alleged victim. Authorities say Dr. Babak Hajhosseini coerced the woman into drinking alcohol before allegedly assaulting her while she was unconscious. As police work to link Dr. Hajhosseini to other alleged victims, his legal team adamantly denies the accusations and vows to clear his name in court and the court of public opinion. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Well, this is just a shocking case that has rattled the Los Angeles medical community. We're talking about Dr. Babak Hajhosseini. This is a prominent Beverly Hills physician, founder of the Wound and Burn Centers of America. He has now been arrested and charged with drugging and sexually assaulting a woman. Now, to be clear, Hajhosseini's legal team is pushing back on this. They're asserting that the charges, the allegations are false. And when I say this is all centered around a single woman's account. However, authorities believe there may be other victims or alleged victims here. So here's a breakdown of what's known so far and how Hajhosseini's defense team is challenging the allegations. So we go back to November 26. Dr. Hajhosseini, a 42-year-old Beverly Hills surgeon, was arrested after a woman reported to the Los Angeles Police Department that he had drugged and sexually assaulted her. And the LAPD, they released a statement on the arrest and suggested this is not an isolated accusation. According to their statement, Hajhosseini used job recruiting websites and offered high hourly wages to locate and entice potential victims. He would then invite the potential victims to work overtime hours after his residence. Once at the residence, Hajhosseini pressured at least one victim into consuming an alcoholic beverage. After consuming the beverage, the victim fell unconscious before Hajhosseini sexually assaulted and recorded her. Now, the department has not identified this woman publicly. No other victims have come forward at this time, but it's our understanding that authorities are continuing to investigate this case. But following his arrest, Dr. Hajhosseini was granted bail, posted a $2 million bond on November 29th. A month later, on December 23rd, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office filed the following charges against him. We have 2 counts of rape by use of drugs, 1 count of rape of an unconscious or asleep person, 1 count of oral copulation by anesthesia or controlled substance, and 4 counts of oral copulation of an unconscious or asleep person. And then we have also 1 felony count of sodomy of an unconscious person. Now, we did a little bit of digging into Dr. Hajhosseini. Here's what we found. So the Wound and Burn Centers of America, which he founded in 2022, is located in the upscale Beverly Grove neighborhood of Los Angeles. And the center specializes in wound care, burn treatment, serves patients across Southern California, including in areas like Beverly Hills, Malibu, Santa Monica. As for his specific credentials, we actually were able to locate his Instagram account where he posted this snippet of his background to a pinned story on his page.
What defines a board-certified wound healing specialist? Hey guys, I'm Dr. Hajhosseini, a board-certified wound healing specialist here in Los Angeles and founder of Wound and Burn Centers of America. Wound healing is a unique and novel specialty. I completed my advanced wound healing fellowship training at Stanford University, which is arguably the most competitive program in the world. There are several wound centers out there, but they're often run by providers from a variety of different training backgrounds. And in many cases, folks who are not an MD. There is a big difference. If it was my body, I would make sure to find a wound healing specialist who is an MD and board certified by the American Board of Wound Management. For me, I did 7 years of combined undergrad and medical school, 3 years of general surgery training, 3 years of postdoctoral research fellowship in minimally invasive surgery, and 3 years of training in plastic surgery, which was solely focused on complex wound healing. Total of 16 years of medical training. This is the level of expertise our patients deserve.
Now, according to the Wound and Burn Centers of America website, Hajhosseini is also a member of several respected medical associations, including the American Burn Association, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, and the Wound Healing Society, further cementing his standing in the medical field. Now, also on his account, he posts of the various treatments that he offers patients. According to the activity on his account, he still appears to be working at his practice, posting videos of his treatments, such as this video, which went up 3 days after he was charged, which we'll show you a little snippet of.
Hey guys, this is Dr. Hajhosseini, wound healing specialist here in Los Angeles, founder of Wound and Burn Centers of America, to showcase something very unique here, compression wrap that we do for a lot of our patients that have venous ulcers or some wounds that is related to the problems with the circulation.
And his most recent post went up on New Year's Eve, which would have been, what, 8 days after he was officially charged in this case? And that post showcased various positive experiences from numerous patients, with the caption reading, "What an amazing year it's been for our practice. Feeling incredibly grateful and blessed for the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of so many in our community this year. We can't wait to see what 2025 holds for us and our wonderful patients. Here's to a new year filled with hope and healing. Wishing you all a happy new year." Now, despite his active social media presence, he's facing some pretty egregious and serious charges here. And we also checked him out on TruthFinder, the powerful background checker. We were able to locate his information, like addresses, his work history. Didn't find any prior criminal cases connected to him. And by the way, Law&Crime, we partner with TruthFinder. We use it all the time to get details on people involved in our stories. But even if you don't work in true crime, this can be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind. After all, it's one of the largest public record search services in the United States. And with the paid subscription service, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And so if you're interested right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC-sidebar. Okay, now following the statement from the LAPD, Dr. Hajhosseini's legal team quickly went on the offense, and they released a statement strongly denying the allegations here. His attorney, Kayla Mason, called the allegations false and salacious, vowed that his client would fight the charges in court, saying Dr. Hajhosseini will try his case in court, not in the media. In the courtroom, cases are decided based on evidence, not innuendo. And Dr. Hajhosseini voluntarily took a polygraph exam, which he passed. Now, we know that a polygraph exam is usually not admissible in court, but Dr. Hajhosseini's legal team is confident that the results, along with other evidence, will clear his name, saying there is extensive evidence proving that these allegations are false, which will be presented in court. Dr. Hajhosseini looks forward to complete vindication in court. So I want to bring in now Andrea Lewis, who's an experienced trial attorney, former prosecutor who specializes in sex crimes and offenses. Thanks so much for coming on. Just your overall thoughts when you heard this case, because as strong as it is, the allegations, in the sense that we're talking, about sexual assault and drugging, you're also hearing this very adamant defense where they are, maybe not surprisingly coming back and fighting against this, but really two different sides to this. Can you explain, in your opinion, the significance of the charges and your overall impression of this?
Sure. The charges, as you noted, are really shocking. And I'll tell you this, though, they are not as unusual as you'd think. There are many circumstances that I can think of where doctors have been charged with or accused of similar behavior. Here, I'm over in Florida. Off the top of my head, I can think of at least 4 or 5 different examples of doctors around this region that have at least been accused of similar type just horrific behavior. Now, we ask ourselves, why is that? Is that because they have access to maybe powerful drugs? Is it because they know how to sedate patients? The answer to that is anyone's guess, but it's really an alarming behavior, especially from someone who's supposed to be trusted in the community. Now, the other thing to note about these types of crimes are that they're oftentimes very difficult to prove. Why is that? Well, by the very nature of the fact that they're drugging patients, rendering them unconscious, or at least the allegations in this case are, patients can't remember things. So if a person can't remember what happened to them, it's awfully hard for them to turn around and give a statement to police. And it seems here, based on what the allegations are that have come out so far, he's sort of laid the foundation for that. In other words, well, she had a drink, she passed out, maybe she was drunk. And so, this type of thing is just very scary, and they're crimes that are often very hard to prove.
Let me ask you about the drugging, though. Would it be, it's different than if a random John Doe drugs a woman at a bar. If he's a doctor, he can use that in his defense, maybe as a way to suggest, hey, I had a right to administer this drug in a way. The evidence of the drugging or the administration of how much was ingested or actually injected into a person, how do you prove that? What are the complications surrounding that? I'm just trying to make sense of, these are very serious charges, but like you said, it might not be a straightforward case.
Right. And you just hit on a very important point that I was thinking a lot about after I initially read some of the reporting on this is the police are out there and they're asking for more victims to come forward. They have reason to believe, according to what they've said, that there are other people out there. So, of course, the first question is, well, who would these other people be? Are they people that he's allegedly met on dating websites? Are they other employees, like appears to be what happened here, that he has met or that he's employed at his practice? Or are they patients? And so the point you just brought up, which is a great one, is if they do have reason to believe that there are other victims out there, and if some of those individuals, as women, presumably, are his patients, then this may be very difficult because in those circumstances, he would have logically had, in most cases, a good reason to be giving them different types of drugs or sedatives for their treatment. So if he has a legitimate medical reason to be giving them these types of drugs, and then the drugs knock these patients out, that is going to be certainly a justification or a defense that his attorneys will bring up in court. On the other hand, if this is a circumstance where the person has been in his home, who's a house guest of his or something to that effect, then I think that defense is not going to go quite as far. In those circumstances, that there wouldn't be any reason for him to be giving presumably drugs or anesthesia or anything like that to someone who's over at his house.
The allegation that he recorded this alleged victim, that could be the strongest piece of evidence if that's true, right?
Absolutely. That and DNA if they have it. But you just hit the nail on the head there. It's going to be, I feel, without even based on what little information they've given us, I think these recordings are going to be the crux of the case. I don't know why these predators, and I'm assuming if the allegations are true in this case, then that would certainly, I think, be indicative that this man has predatory behavior. In those circumstances, you have people who really get their kicks from rendering people unconscious, putting them in a defenseless state, and then recording them. That's all part of their MO oftentimes. And so it's an interesting dynamic because here you've made it so it's very difficult for them to be able to remember or have an accurate account of what occurred. But on the other hand, you're providing the best evidence there is, which is documenting on video exactly what you did. And so those videos are really critical in cases like this, of course, along with DNA evidence, if they in fact have it.
And it's more difficult for him if he's accused of drugging women by giving them drinks as opposed to in the middle of a procedure or something like that, because we go back to what the allegation is. The allegation is that he used these job recruiting websites to lure women to his home. That is an unusual allegation. And again, if we go back to the prosecutors here, how do they prove that? How do they prove there's this element of coercion or enticement to lure people back in? Because if you're saying it's a way to get people to work for him and, there's hourly wages and you work at his residence and overtime hours, what could be the difficulties or what could be some issues that we're looking at in terms of proving this?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the defense comes up with some type of this person came over to his residence for whatever this overtime is. It's difficult for me to imagine what type of overtime a medical personnel in a wound care center would be performing at a doctor's residence, but neither here nor there. I think it's clear that the defense is probably going to say that maybe something sexual developed there consensually, and that's all this is, that she's having regrets the next day, and this was a consensual sex act. That would be my guess. But I'll tell you, just based on the allegations as the authorities have laid them out so far, it does seem quite reminiscent to Bill Cosby. He would invite women over to his house, or at least the allegations in that case. He would put something in their drink. The next thing the women know, they would get very tired and they'd wake up with most or all of their clothing removed. So it's, time will tell. Obviously, we see how that worked out in the Bill Cosby case. But I think it's really going to be, these women's credibility is going to be very important. I think that if there's a pattern of this, which the police appear to be indicating that there is, that would be very helpful. If he is putting medical ads out there, let's say that where he's only seeking female candidates, or where he seems to be only interviewing female candidates, and these interviews are happening at his home, which is on its face unusual. All of those things, I think, would really be very helpful to explaining to a jury how this man went about laying the foundation to ultimately commit the assault, if that is in fact what happened. And I'll say this this too. They have presented evidence to a grand jury already, and they came out down with the charges. So, there have been members of the community who have looked at some of the evidence out there, weighted, and decided that charges were warranted.
One question I have about this, I would imagine there's strength in numbers. If there was multiple victims here, multiple charges, that's a stronger case for prosecutors than if you build it off of just one alleged victim. Which makes me wonder, why would they come out so strong? Why would authorities come out so strong and suggest that there are multiple victims and not come forward with charges that are with respect to multiple victims? Is it the idea, listen, we have to charge him with something right now because he's a continuing danger to the public. We need to charge him with something. We have the evidence, at least with respect to one victim. We will wait for more victims or alleged victims to come forward. But what happens if they don't? What happens if there are no more victims or alleged victims that come forward and it's just this one accuser? Does that hurt authorities? Does that hurt the prosecution's case? Talk to me about that, because again, it's you see what I'm saying, right? They came out and said, we believe there are more, but they could have waited, but they didn't. I'm just trying to make sense of that.
Well, let me tell you, this is really akin to a case I had worked on here in just the last year. That was just unbelievably horrific set of circumstances. And it goes to the heart of really what you're talking about there. And I've seen this in other cases, even that I prosecuted. People who videotape crimes, they're doing it to store some type of, so they can go back and look at it later to see, what they did so that they can continue to get enjoyment out of this sick pleasure in the future. So oftentimes what happens though, if they are videotaping victims, that they may not be putting their face in it. So let's assume that authorities have identified some, even multiple videos. And if they do have other victims in them, they may not know who those people are, because those individuals, presumably women, may not even know that they were assaulted if they were passed out. So what happens is the authorities are often left with videos or pictures of women who are either passed out, who are having sex acts performed on them, or who are in some type of a state, or who are, the way that they're depicted leads them to believe that they were being victimized as well. And authorities will then say, well, gosh, we have this evidence. We don't know who the people are to bring the charges though. So they will put a call out there hoping that other women who might have had an unusual or a concerning experience with a particular person, in this case, this doctor, would come forward and say, you know what, I couldn't put my finger on it then. I woke up, I didn't remember anything, but here are things that led me to believe that something bad happened while I was in his presence. And hopefully they'll come forward and make this full circle. So that's really the hope here.
What do you make of the polygraph results? They say this defense team says that he passed it. Now, but I understand, polygraph results are not admissible in court. But if they say, look, he passed it, told the truth, what do you make of that?
Well, there's a reason they're not admissible in court, is because there is scientific evidence, and the courts have not agreed to bring them in because their inability to be trusted at all times. Are those results accurate? It's a tool that investigators use. It's not coming into evidence. We have no idea what the results really are. That's what his attorney is saying, which, may or may not be true. So I don't really put too much faith in that. It doesn't really move the needle for me one way or the other. There's a lot of reasons why someone would pass or fail a polygraph test that isn't necessarily specifically about the questions they're being asked. So that doesn't really change my opinion on how terrible these circumstances are one way or the other.
Well, I mentioned before, it's not just his attorney coming forward and saying these charges are false, talking about the polygraph exam. If you look at Dr. Hajhosseini's social media, I mentioned it, continuing to post after the charges. Is that unusual to you? Do you think that could that come into evidence in some way? I mean, I have to tell you, the first thing that I thought was, he's coming so strong in defense of these allegations, obviously, because they're really heinous allegations. And I think putting forward, hey, he passed the polygraph, to try to not hurt his business, right? He's trying to say, I'll deal with these criminal charges at a later date, but for right now, let me prove to you in the court of public opinion why I'm innocent. There's nothing going on here. Positive experiences with my clients. That's what I took away from that. What did you take away from that?
Exactly. That's certainly what he's trying to portray. Now, this may be me being cynical, having been a prosecutor for a long time, and then, of course, switching to the civil side and prosecuting these cases civilly. To me, all that is a defense attorney, or in this case, I guess the doctor, his practice, coming out and trying to do some PR rehab to maybe hoping that the charges fall apart and that he can keep his business. At the risk of sounding cynical, as I said, it would be in this business to not have someone come out and at least initially say, I'm innocent. This never happened. They got it all wrong. They're framing me. This was a consensual. That is said all the time. And what ultimately ends up happening many times is they're just as guilty as the prosecution has said that they are.
Yeah, look, and again, he is facing some serious charges, and it's our understanding, if convicted, Dr. Babak Hajhosseini could face, according to California state law, over 30 years in prison. And as the LAPD continues to investigate this case, as we mentioned, they are urging anybody with information to contact LA Crime Stoppers at the number you see on your screen. You can submit a tip anonymously there or on the LA Crime Stoppers website. And Andrea Lewis, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your expert analysis as always. And that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.